I'm Dan Drake. This is Front Up on Visitor Network TV. With us today is Saperstein, who is a man of many accomplishments, and particularly in the scientific field, but he's here to talk about his role as chair of what is archaically called the Article 68 Work Group. Why don't you take it from there, Lee, and say, what is that all about?
Dan, I'd be pleased to, but I would like to give credit to Lucinda Young, who was the longtime chair. At the very end of our meetings and so forth, she said, I want to dedicate myself to producing the documents, and Lee, would you sit in the chair for a couple of weeks? And I did. Prior to that, I was secretary. Okay. I don't mind it being called the Article 68 Work Group because it began out of town meeting. It was one of the articles in town meeting, and it was an effort to respond to the state's statutory requirement that we mind our waters in the harbors and great ponds of Nantucket. It's the so-called Massachusetts Estuaries Project, and it says, hey, look out for your nutrient contamination. But the word is nutrient contamination.
What does that mean?
Well, anybody who's interested can go to the EPA website and use the search term, that's epa.gov, and use the search term nutrient contamination, and it's simply excess of what's good for plants turns out not to be so good for the waters. Nitrate and phosphate are our two big
And those
culprits.
come from where? I mean, in this context.
In the broadest sense, they come from 4 or 5 sources. We're going to be talking about fertilizer, which is probably number 3. Number 1 is combustion products, nitrates in the atmosphere from cars and fossil fuel.
Which comes down in the form of rain, right?
Yeah, we used to call it acid rain, but it's those same nitrates. Second is septic system, and Nantucket's got some very rigorous laws on or statutes on how to build a good septic system. Number 3 is fertilizer. Number 4 is wildlife, and then there may be other sources.
Okay, but obviously you were focusing on
fertilizer because it's something we can control. We're not going to tell the birds to hold it in.
Right. Or the fish, or the...
Right. And we're already dealing with the septic system. The nitrate in the atmosphere is something that we can't deal with, but we can deal with fertilizer, and we can ask people to do what's right for the plants, but not in excess.
So where are we in the process now? The work group delivered a report last winter to the selectmen.
Right, and actually more than that. Article 68 was the April 5th, 2010 town meeting. So it's been over 3 years now that we did this. We delivered, we have to admit a little bit late, a major report which we call shorthand BMP for Best Management Practices for the Application of Fertilizer on Nantucket. And it's a 65-page document that you can get on the town's website, actually going through the vehicle of the Department of Natural Resources. We delivered a model regulation, and we delivered a home rule petition for the town to get consent from the legislature. Okay, the home rule petition is probably stalled because the state of Massachusetts wrote an omnibus bill for fertilizer, which we recognized didn't really address the specific issues in Nantucket. However, our regulatory package through the Department of Health has been passed, and it is in place. And so we're looking, I'm afraid a little bit slowly, at implementation. Department of Health and, Board of Health and Department of Natural Resources.
And so what is being done? What is the implementation plan?
Long term, we're going to ask commercial appliers of fertilizer to get a license, and all that is needed to get a license is to show that they understand what the Nantucket requirements are. Homeowners don't need a license to do their own thing, but they do need to follow the regulations that are in the Department of Health.
What about people who sell fertilizer?
We may not control sales. That's a constitutional requirement, but we are working with the purveyors, and there's only 2 or 3 or 4, Marine, Valero, Island Lumber, maybe 1 or 2 others.
Bartlett's?
Bartlett's sell some, yes, to give us fertilizers that meet the requirements, low in phosphate, and bluntly, not in the mega dose, because we're asking people to put a little bit of nitrate down, perhaps a little more frequently than they're accustomed to. And so when you get a 30 or 35 percent nitrate, it's very difficult to keep the quantities down. So it's probably better off using a 10%.
What is, if you've bought a standard green lawn product now, what would be the percentage of
if it's got urea form, it's usually higher than 20, 25, maybe even 30. So you've got to set your spreaders with a very low application rate. We do everything or the regulations have everything in terms of pounds of nitrate, pounds of nitrogen actually, per 1,000 square feet. And we say no more than 3 pounds in a year, no more than half a pound in an application. But you got to go through the arithmetic, which we help you with in the BMP, to convert that to what a bag of fertilizer means. So it may be 5%, 10%, or it may be a very low setting. And then we say no more than once every 2 weeks. Now, a lot of the specialists basically are golf courses, do what they call spoon feeding. They put a little bit down frequently because that way it's going to the plants and not below the root zone into the groundwater.
Or running off.
Yeah, running off in a high rainstorm. We do address that. If the weather report says it's going to rain like fury as it did a week ago, don't put fertilizer down in a rush to get it down just before the rain comes. It's all going to go.
But isn't the issue getting out there to the homeowner, and particularly the homeowner who is only here for a couple of weeks and wants to rent his house, wants it to look nice, which includes a nice looking lawn?
Right.
How do we get to them? How do we...
And there's a number of things that we've suggested. Some of them are going on. A lot of the volunteer efforts are going on now. The Nantucket Garden Club is an enthusiast. Its president was a member of our work group. The Nantucket Land Council is doing things with the commercials.
Commercial landscapers.
Yeah, running seminars for them. They had some great presentations, room full of people saying, what should we do? But the fact that we had 80, somebody said, well, you know, that's only a quarter, 80 people. That's only a quarter of the companies that are doing it. So Land Council is printing the best management practices, the BMP, and distributing it. They've had it translated into Spanish. We're trying to get out there. Enforcement, however, is the issue that the town has to deal with.
But how about, getting the question of getting the information out to people and making them aware of the consequences of not doing it.
Dan, that's why I'm here.
That's part of it, why you're here, indeed. But you know, there's a guy in, I don't know, Wellesley, Massachusetts, or Scarsdale, New York, or somewhere.
And he says to his landscaper, we're opening our house on May 1st, and we want it green. And the landscaper has to respond to him, Mr. Nantucketer, if I put anything down before April 15th, I'm wasting your money because it doesn't do any good. Grass doesn't grow until the ground temperature, on average, day and night, is 55 degrees. And that's round about May 1st. So I will get to your house just as soon as I can when it's appropriate.
But it's more than that. It's also using the stuff that makes it look incredibly green.
That's putting it down.
Use paint instead.
Well, look, Nantucket doesn't like aluminum siding, and AstroTurf is a no-go.
But it seems to me that that's really the issue: is getting the people, the homeowners, particularly.
The rules say not before April 15th and not after October 15th. We do say that there is reason to fertilize in the fall because you get good root growth rather than shoot growth.
Has there been any discussion of perhaps sending out some kind of information card with people's tax bills?
There's been discussions of all of that. It's now going to be up to the town to do it. Those of us who are interested in it, former members of the Article 68 work group, will go with Department of Natural Resources when they're not patrolling beaches, when they're not dealing with swimming type things. We made suggestions for a 2-page flyer. That's the document I just gave you. Printed on 2 sides. The purveyors could give that every time they sell a bag of fertilizer. We've thought about little plastic cards because we talk about when you irrigate, you shouldn't get more than about an inch of soil wet. Well, how do you know what an inch of soil is? We thought maybe a little card with a ruler on the side. Mow when it's 3 inches or greater. Don't mow less than that.
Just as a matter of interest, do you know when somebody sets a lawn sprinkler how long it takes to get an inch of water in the...
It depends upon the settings, and there are water gauges. We had one of the water people on our committee. We've got a whole section in the BMP on how to manage your irrigation, because excess water leads to runoff. It goes below the root zone. The water goes below the root zone. Plants don't deal with it, so it's going to carry stuff into the groundwater. We're a sandy island. Groundwater migrates to the ponds and the harbors quickly.
It's true.
It goes fast.
Has the same issue with bad septic systems.
Right. And so in the septic systems, they use dyes. With the fertilizers, we're hoping that analytical equipment will be good enough to source the nitrate, whether it's septic or fertilizer. Right now, the simple tests can't tell the difference.
What message do you want to leave with us?
Nantucket is precious. Our waters are precious. Our commerce with shellfishing, our commerce with the resort community. That's our #1 source of income. Let's not spoil it. Let's keep it looking attractive. And it doesn't take much to follow the rules. We've written them so that they are convenient for homeowners.
Great. LeeSaperstein, thank you very much for sharing this with us.
Pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.